Cool. Well, I think it's recording.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Well, for the first question, how did you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in education?
All right. So before I start, I'll also say again, I'm in one of the Richmond Public Schools. I'm at Henry Marsh Elementary School. It's in the East End. I'm wearing a mask inside, even though I'm the only person in the room, because that is our mandate for Richmond Public Schools, to keep everyone safe. So just let me know if at any time I go out or you can't hear me. But I decided to go into education when I was around your age. I was in college. I'd always volunteered in elementary school and middle school and high school. I'm from Richmond. I was born here and went to school here. I went to a small private all Catholic girls school where we were required to do service as a part of graduation. And so I liked it. You know, some of the girls hated it and struggled and almost didn't graduate because they didn't do, I think it was 50 hours, and I had hundreds of hours because I just had the bug. And a lot of it was with kids. So I tutored a lot of children. I went to a lot of schools. And so those are some of the things that I really enjoyed. I didn't go into college thinking I would be a teacher. I actually wanted to be a lawyer and had always said that from day one, and wanted to be the first Black female Supreme Court justice. And sad enough to say I could still be that because we haven't had one yet. But that was kind of my big dream. And then when I got to college, I went to UVA as an undergrad and I continued to do service. And I was a big sibling, and I had a little sibling who was 5 years old. She was in kindergarten, and that was my first year, freshman year at UVA. And when I went to meet her for the first time, as in most cases, when there's a service component and colleges are going into schools that need support, most of the times those schools are predominantly Black and brown students. And so this student was a Black young lady. Her mom had not graduated high school and just wanted a mentor for her. And so when I first met her, instead of being really excited to see me, she actually was really confused because she looked at me and I said, "I'm your big sibling. My name is Erin." And she told me that I couldn't be her big sibling because I was Black, and Black people aren't allowed to go to that school being UVA. So in her short 5 years, the messages that she had taken in about this place she grew up, this school that was in walking distance from her home, was that is a place that I'm not allowed to go because of the color of my skin. And there were all these messages that were coming into her young mind to confirm those things. There aren't a lot of Black students at UVA in terms of percentage. She hadn't seen many. The people in her community, much like her mother, many of them hadn't graduated high school and didn't have the opportunity to go to any college. So with that experience, I really just thought, you know, this isn't about coloring with her and having fun all the time. Like, this is actually like serious. Like, I want her to understand the possibilities in her life. And so that led me to, after, when I was considering graduation, doing the program Teach for America. And so I applied for that in my 4th year at UVA, senior year. And, you know, it's a competitive process, but basically they take, you know, recent college graduates and they put them in underperforming schools, again, usually in Black and brown communities, and you teach for 2 years. And so that is how my education journey got started. I still didn't want to be a teacher. I just thought, I'm going to do this 2 years, make a difference, get an education award that will help me pay for law school. But again, I got the bug and I just never left education, even though I did leave the classroom.
Okay. The next question we have for you is, how did you transition from working here at VCU to the Richmond Public School System?
So I began working at VCU in 2008. And I worked there until last year, so a very long time in our Division of Community Engagement. It had been a few years since I had been in the classroom as a classroom teacher, and I left teaching for a number of reasons, but it's funny. Do you guys have TikTok? Are you on? Okay. So we probably have very different algorithms that come up for what we watch. But one of my algorithms, I just always get TikToks from teachers and educators. And the common theme is burnout and just people are exhausted. In fact, Wednesday, our superintendent at Richmond Public Schools, we have a newsletter that comes out called RPS Direct. It goes out to like 25,000 people every day. And on Wednesday, he basically put it out there and said, our teachers are exhausted, our kids are exhausted, we've all experienced trauma in this pandemic. And that first week of November is a weird week in schools. We're closed on Election Day, Tuesday, and then we're closed on Diwali for the holiday. And then Friday was parent-teacher conference, so 3 days out. And so he just made an executive decision based on hearing from people that they needed a break to have the whole week be off. And he's getting some pushback from that. But I think we needed it because our teachers, I mean, they're calling out because they're mentally exhausted. And I say that to say, even though we're in a pandemic, some of the core stressors in teaching haven't changed. And in my few years teaching, like I thought to myself, this is rewarding work, but I'm young. And so for me, this $37,000 is like amazing. I feel like I'm rich because I live with 2 roommates and this is the most money I've ever made. But as I thought about my life in the future and working 60, 70, 80 hours a week for my students to just perform at the level they should, I just thought I can't do this forever, but I still want to support in some way. So that was a long story to say why I transitioned, but I think that's important. And I think that if you talk to educators who are no longer in the classroom and ask them why, it typically is never because they didn't like teaching. It's never because they didn't like their students. They love their students. That's what kept them there. It's typically because of exhaustion, the pressures of high stakes testing, and not getting enough support from administrators. And in my role now, I actually am an administrator, and I understand even more what teachers don't get is administrators, principals in particular, are like middle management. There are people telling them what to do, and it trickles down, and teachers just really bear the brunt of that and have so much they're doing. So I thought, how do I get out of that, but I'm still connected to schools? VCU had an opportunity with a program called AmeriCorps. Have you ever heard of it? So AmeriCorps, you know, it's America, it's the United States. It is the domestic version of Peace Corps. So you've heard of Peace Corps, right? So Peace Corps is where, you know, you're in another country, a developing country, and you are, you know, serving for a couple of years and bringing infrastructure, capacity, all of those great things. AmeriCorps is really the same thing, but it's in the United States and you're going into underserved communities. So it's kind of like the program I did Teach for America. It has a service component. And so I came in and I ran that program for several years with VCU students like yourself, coming in part-time. You know, they were full-time students, most of the members, and they would tutor in Richmond Public Schools. So I would work with anywhere from 18 to 20-something elementary schools, and I'd have like 80 AmeriCorps members, and they'd be on these teams. And so they would come to a school like Henry Marsh. Henry Marsh actually is renamed. Henry Marsh used to be, shoot, it'll come to me. But anyway, you know, a lot of our schools are being renamed if they have any ties to slavery, like the original name was a slave owner's name or something. And so this is a school that is now named after Henry Marsh. Sorry about that. And I would send people to schools like this in teams of 5, and they would tutor kids. And I loved it because it took away the stress of being in a classroom. Being transparent, I was able to make more money than a classroom teacher, but I also was still supporting a school system to help kids learn to read and improve. And so I did that for a few years. And then I had a couple other positions. My last position was as the director of the Aspire program. And you guys probably haven't heard of it because it was gone before you came, but it was a well-known program at VCU. You may have heard of Transform. Have you heard of that? So Transform is the living learning program. And basically when I was at VCU, there were several living learning programs where students had a focus area and they would live in a same residence hall, kind of like the Honors College. And they took classes just like you, but the classes that people did in Aspire were all around volunteerism, service, social justice, how do we support the community? And it stood for Academic Scholars Program in Real Environments. Now they have kind of merged multiple living learning programs into Transform. So if that was a program you were interested in, it's going to have elements of, internationalism, volunteerism and service, and leadership. So a little plug for that because I know the director of that program. But I decided to leave VCU, not because I didn't love the work I did. I actually loved working with VCU students and the program I was a part of. And Professor Hart was a person who was on my team. I actually left because, as I said, my program was being phased out. And they were going to start a new program that was a single living learning program, which I think is going to be as amazing as the other living learning programs where it has really great leadership. But when I looked around, I thought, okay, one program, we have a lot of people in these programs. It's not a one-to-one ratio. So some people, even if you wanted to stay, are not going to be able to have positions. And so it was just a sign for me to do something different. When you're at a place for 12 years, you get comfortable. I was very comfortable. And I thought, I want to do something different. And so I started applying. Luckily, I had a long time. I wasn't in a rush to find a new job because I still loved my current job. But I was able, after about a year of really deep searching for things that I could see that I would be passionate about, I found this job as the Director of Family and Community Engagement with Richmond Public Schools.
That's really interesting. And since you worked in public education and like higher education, did you ever notice like a difference in the culture between the two?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, K-12 is compulsory. Part of the work I do as the Director of Family and Community Engagement, my office is the Office of Engagement, which means we're doing a lot of positive and fun things. Like we did festivals to get families excited about learning. We also have to do some things that are around compulsory education, which is when students miss 5 days of school, people on my team are calling, reaching out, doing home visits and saying, hey, Victoria, Dalton didn't come to school today. Is everything okay? Is there anything we can help you with? Of course, if it goes beyond 5, we're talking 10, 15, you get to 18 days of missed school. We're talking about chronic absenteeism. You guys probably didn't have attendance issues growing up, but if you miss 18 days of school, you will fail a class as a high school student. You can fail your grade. So attendance is super important. And for the families that we work with in RPS, most of our schools are Title I schools. Have you guys ever heard that phrase before, Title I school? Yeah. So being a Title I school, just the basic definition means that over half of your students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. In Richmond, the vast majority of our schools are Title I school. The schools that aren't, you can literally count them. And so that means we're working with a population that needs a lot more basic things before they can even start learning. So the thing that I think is different when I was like a 5th grade teacher is, especially when I was like 22 years old,